테슬라가 매일 새로운 역사를 써 나가고 있습니다. 요즘은 테슬라 차가 부드럽고 편한 세단인지 아니면 스피드를 위해 과감하게 불편함을 감수하는 스포츠카인지 구분이 안 될 정도로 성능이 뛰어난데요. 그래서 요즘 테슬라의 모델 S를 스포츠 세단 전기차라고 부릅니다. 세단처럼 편안하고 조용하면서 스포츠카만큼 성능이 뛰어나다는 이야기인데요. 이름에서부터 대단한 차라는 게 느껴지죠. 테슬라의 스포츠 세단 전기차인 모델 S가 2023년 6월 2일 독일 니르부르크링 트랙에서 포르쉐를 앞지르고 전기차 부문에서 새로운 주행 기록을 세웠습니다. 전기차 부문에서는 포르쉐보다 훨씬 빠른 차가 바로 테슬라다 하는 것인데요. 이 트랙 패키지를 장착한 모델 S 플레드가 니르부르크링 트랙 약 20km를 7분 25.231초로 완주했습니다. 이 기록이 얼마나 대단한 것이냐면요. 작년에 포르쉐 타이칸 터보 S의 기록보다도 8초 이상 빠른 기록이라고 합니다. 정말 대단하죠. 일론 머스크는 전기차는 느리고 못생기고 성능이 좋지 않다는 사람들의 고정관념을 깨뜨리고 싶었다고 했습니다. 그래서 멋진 스포츠카 로드스터를 만들게 되었다고 했는데요. 아주 멋지고 섹시한 차라고 소개를 했죠. 그런데 아주 멋진 로드스터를 만들었더니 사람들은 이제 장난감 차라고 하며 놀렸다고 합니다. 그러면서 하는 말이 이 럭셔리 세단은 못 만들 거라고 했다는 거죠. 전기차는 휘발유차인 세단과는 경쟁이 안 된다고 하면서 말이죠. 그래서 일론 머스크는 또다시 결심했습니다. 그 말이 잘못되었다는 것을 증명하기 위해 세계 최고 퀄리티의 전기차 모델 S를 만들었다고 말이죠.
How is it possible that Elon Musk could launch two impossible businesses, SpaceX, a builder of rocket ships, and Tesla, which could be the first successful car company startup in America in 90 years?
How did you figure you were going to start a car company and be successful at it?
Well, I didn't really think Tesla would be successful. I thought we would most likely fail. But I thought that we at least could address the false perception that people had that an electric car had to be ugly and slow and boring like a golf cart.
But you say you didn't expect the company to be successful, then why try?
If something's important enough, you should try, even if the probable outcome is failure. You can drive for free forever on pure sunlight. That's the message we're trying to convey. So even if there's a zombie apocalypse and the grid breaks down, you'll still be able to charge your car.
So there's a zombie apocalypse warranty.
Yes, exactly.
And if you're running from zombies, it's good to know the Model S won the highest quality rating in the history of Consumer Reports and has the government's highest safety rating. Musk may be changing the car the way Steve Jobs changed the phone. Like Jobs, he's a perfectionist in the art of engineering.
포르쉐의 가장 빠른 전기차보다도 8초 이상 빠른 차가 이제 테슬라라는 이야기인데요. 포르쉐의 가장 큰 특징이 스피드였는데 이렇게 되면 포르쉐의 포지셔닝이 점점 애매해지게 되는 것 같습니다. 포르쉐의 설립자인 페르디난드 포르쉐는 자동차를 만들면서 내가 꿈꾸던 자동차를 찾을 수 없었다. 그래서 직접 만들기로 했다 하는 말을 했죠. 독일의 기계공학자이자 폭스바겐 및 포르쉐의 창립자였던 그는 이 메르세디스 벤츠에도 일부분 관여를 했고요. 하이브리드 자동차에 대해서도 큰 관심을 가지고 있었다고 합니다. 포르쉐는 현대적인 자동차 기술에 큰 영향을 주었고요. 1999년에는 세계의 자동차 전문가로 인정되어서 명예의 전당에 들어가기도 했습니다. 나중에 나치 독일 체제에 적극 협조해서 나치당에 입당하게 되었고 전차 제조나 B1의 개발을 해서 2차 세계대전이 끝난 후에는 감옥에 들어가게 되었습니다. 그의 아들인 페리 포르쉐가 이 생산 라인 중에 하나를 받아내서 나중에 비틀에 엄청난 로열티를 받아 제기하게 되었죠. 테슬라 모델 S는 트랙을 주행하는 동안 최고 속도 288km/h를 기록하기도 했는데요. 이 구불구불 휘어진 트랙에서 288km/h는 정말 엄청난 기록입니다. 일론 머스크는 트윗에서 테슬라 플레드 레이싱 팀 정말 축하한다 라고 전했습니다. 이 모델 S 플레드는 라운드 스티어링 휠, 탄소 세라믹 브레이크, 트랙용 타이어 등을 장착했습니다. 최고 속도는 321km/h 이상 나오는 것으로 전해지고 있는데요. 정말 엄청나죠. 최근 몇 년간 테슬라와 포르쉐는 바로 이곳 니르부르크링 트랙에서 전기차 속도를 두고 경쟁해 왔습니다. 누가 최고의 스피드 전기차가 될 것인가를 두고 테슬라와 포르쉐가 맞붙었는데 테슬라가 큰 차이로 이기면서 업계의 판도가 완전히 달라지고 있습니다. 이제 전기차는 느리고 못생겼다는 이미지는 완전히 사라지게 된 것입니다. 이전에 테슬라와 포르쉐의 스피드 경쟁을 간단히 요약하자면 이 포르쉐 타이칸이 2019년 먼저 신기록을 세웠고요. 2년 후인 2021년 테슬라 모델 S 플레드가 7분 35.579초를 돌파하며 타이칸의 기록을 7초 이상 단축시키기도 했습니다. 경기장에 대해서 좀 소개하자면요. 니르부르크링 서킷은 독일의 아주 유명한 자동차 경기장입니다. 독일 중서부 라인란트 팔츠주의 니르부르크에 있는 서킷이죠. 세계 유명 자동차 경기장들과 어깨를 나란히 하는데요. 유럽에서 니르부르크링 서킷 외에는 이탈리아, 프랑스, 벨기에, 영국의 유명한 경기장들이 있습니다. 이탈리아 몬차에는 국립 몬차 자동차 경주장이 있고요. 프랑스 페이드라 루아르 레지옹 사르트주의 주도인 르망에는 라 사르트 서킷이 있습니다. 벨기에 왈롱 리에즈주의 스타벨로에는 스파 프랑코샹 서킷이 있는데요. 서킷 이름은 스파 프랑코샹인데 서킷이 위치한 스타벨로 북서쪽에 있는 도시 스파의 이름과 스타블로의 동네 이름 프랑코샹을 합친 것입니다. 이름이 무척 어렵지만 나름 유명한 서킷입니다. 그리고 영국 노스햄튼셔주의 실버스톤에는 실버스톤 서킷이 있습니다. 이러한 서킷들과 함께 어깨를 나란히 하는 것이 바로 독일의 니르부르크링 서킷인데요. 사실 국내에 니르부르크링 서킷이 알려진 것은 얼마 되지 않았습니다. 최근에 여러 차들이 포르쉐에 도전하고 있다는 언론 기사를 통해서 국내에 니르부르크링 서킷의 존재가 조금씩 알려지게 되었는데요. 몇 년 전부터 현대차가 니르부르크링을 달리며 테스트한다는 것을 대대적으로 홍보하면서 니르부르크링 서킷의 존재가 국내에도 알려지게 되었습니다. 해외에서는 이미 오래전부터 상당수 유명 브랜드의 차들이 니르부르크링 서킷을 달리면서 기록을 경쟁해 왔고요. 그 중에서도 독일 브랜드들의 자존심 싸움이 흥미를 이끄는 요소로 많이 작용해 왔습니다. 이 경기장에서 자동차 레이싱을 하게 되는데 가장 빠른 한 바퀴 주행 시간을 랩 레코드라고 합니다. 레이싱 트랙의 한 바퀴를 랩이라고 하기 때문에 해당 트랙에서 한 바퀴를 가장 빠르게 주행한 자동차의 주행 시간을 랩 레코드라고 부르는 거죠. 자동차의 성능을 측정하는 중요한 지표로 사용됩니다. 특히 자동차 제조업체들 사이에서는 이 새로운 모델이 출시될 경우에 새로운 모델의 성능을 입증하거나 경쟁 모델과의 비교를 위해서 랩 레코드를 사용하고 있습니다. 그런데 일론 머스크가 이곳 니르부르크링 서킷에서 세계에서 가장 빠른 차인 포르쉐에게 과감하게 도전장을 낸 것이었죠. 모델 S 플레드에 대해서 그만큼 자신이 있었던 것입니다. 한번 해보자는 것이었죠. 여기에 자존심이 강한 포르쉐가 응하면서 완전히 빅게임이 된 것인데요. 테슬라와 포르쉐의 전기차 속도 경쟁이 이곳 니르부르크링 서킷에서 최근 몇 년간 벌어졌습니다. 지금으로부터 3년 전인 2019년 8월 한여름에 포르쉐 타이칸 전기차를 출시해서 먼저 7분 42초 전기차 부문 랩 레코드 기록을 세웠습니다. 포르쉐 타이칸은 이제 4도어 스포츠 세단으로 출시된 스포츠카로 기존의 2도어를 고집하던 것과는 다른 모습이었는데요. 일반 스포츠카보다는 차체가 더 긴 모양입니다. 자, 이 기록을 본 일론 머스크는 2년 후인 2021년 9월 테슬라 모델 S 플레드를 내세워서 과감하게 도전을 하는데요. 당시 기록 7분 35초로 이전 최고 기록이었던 포르쉐 7분 42초 기록을 무려 7초로 따돌리면서 전기차 부문 최고 기록을 세웠습니다. 포르쉐의 자존심이 무너지는 순간이었죠. 모델 S 플레드는 잘 아시겠지만 1020마력의 성능의 그 테슬라 최강 모델입니다. 제로백 기록은 2.1초고요. 최고 속도는 321km 이상으로 나오죠. 자, 이제 가만히 있을 포르쉐가 아니었죠. 그로부터 1년이 지난 2022년 포르쉐는 타이칸 터보 S로 재도전합니다. 그래서 결국 테슬라의 기록보다 2초 빠른 7분 33초의 기록을 세우면서 다시금 최고의 자리에 이름을 새겨 넣었습니다. 경쟁이 정말 치열하죠. 초단위 스피드 경쟁이 이 세계에서 벌어지고 있습니다. 일론 머스크는 전열을 다시금 정비해서 2023년 6월 2일 모델 S 플레드를 다시 출격시킵니다. 그리고 니르부르크링 트랙 약 20km를 7분 25.231초로 완주하면서 작년 포르쉐의 타이칸 터보 S의 기록보다 8초 이상 빠른 기록을 세웠습니다. 정말 대단하죠? 무려 8초 이상 빠른 기록을 세웠으니 이제 포르쉐가 웬만해서는 도전하기가 쉽지 않을 것 같습니다. 그래서 이제 독일 니르부르크링 트랙에서 전기차 부문 1등은 당당하게 테슬라의 모델 S가 차지하게 되었습니다. 니르부르크링 스피드 경쟁은 이렇게 마무리되었습니다. 눈썰미 있으신 분들은 금방 눈치채셨을 텐데요. 이번 니르부르크링 트랙에 참여한 모델 S 플레드는 현재 10반 모델과는 다르게 일반 차량에 둥근 핸들이 적용되어 있습니다. 이번 테스트 차량에 적용된 트랙 패키지를 살펴보면요. 알루미늄 단조 휠에 새로운 탄소 세라믹 브레이크와 고성능 브레이크 패드 등이 적용되었습니다. 최대 속도는 아까 말씀드린 것처럼 200mph 321km 이상으로 나오고요. 트랙 패키지의 가격은 15,000달러 약 2천만원에서 2만 달러 약 2,600만원 사이로 책정되었습니다. 테슬라는 6월부터 트랙 패키지를 판매할 예정인데요. 앞서서 일론 머스크는 니르부르크링 랩 레코드를 7분 초반대를 목표로 하고 있다라고 밝히기도 했습니다. 테슬라가 앞으로 더 빨라진다는 이야기죠. 이렇게 자랑스러운 테슬라를 창립한 원년 멤버 마틴 에버하드와 마크 타페닝의 신나는 테슬라 창립 스토리를 함께 들어볼까 합니다.
High-end sports car, faster than a Ferrari, faster than a Lamborghini. Nothing compared to this.
Every which way I did the numbers, the electric cars were a lot better than everything else.
Tesla is pushing the bounds of what is possible with self-driving.
Elonness has increased over the years.
Elon Musk is the most famous Tesla CEO.
Hey everyone!
But Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning were the original founding executives. CNBC sat down with them to talk about the earliest days at Tesla.
There are a lot of people who don't realize you two started the company. How do you respond to people who think that Elon is the creator of Tesla?
Elon was, investor in Series A. He was very supportive always, financially and on the board. And then he became the CEO. He's actually the fourth, I think that's right, the fourth CEO of Tesla. And he has taken it.
Second chairman of the board.
Second chairman of the board. And he's taken it, to heights that are, fantastic. So he's done an amazing job. But yeah, and he was always supportive, from the beginning, but he wasn't the founder in the sense of he wasn't, we started it.
Well, I mean, this is one of the things that I found kind of fascinating about him is that he's actually accomplished some amazing things in his own right.
He's totally amazing.
Yeah, SpaceX is amazing, and he's done some interesting things with Tesla for sure. I'm not sure why he has to also say that he was a founder when he wasn't. I don't understand that.
Oh, yeah, whatever.
Eberhard and Tarpenning met in the 1980s, and in 1997 they founded Nuvo Media, where they created the first ever ebook reader called the Rocket eBook. The idea for Tesla came from Martin's love of sports cars.
For various reasons, I had been thinking about buying a sports car, and this was at a time when
one of many sports cars that he had.
Well, I was thinking about buying a more serious one.
Okay,
Yeah. All right, I had just gotten divorced, and it was what you do when you get divorced. So in the end, I'm looking at these cars that look like a lot of fun, but got 18 miles to the gallon or something. And this is at a time when it seemed very obvious to me that the wars that we were having in the Middle East had something to do with oil, and it seemed also becoming more and more obvious that this global warming thing was real. And in the end, I couldn't buy a car like that. That was just at the time when the car companies who had been selling electric cars in California had managed to get the zero emissions vehicle mandate gutted. Just at the time when I thought I might go buy an electric car, maybe an EV1 or something, they were no longer available. They were actually being taken off the market. And in fact, if it was an EV1 or any of the other leased EVs, they were actually taken back from the owners and destroyed. I had talked about this with Mark, and Mark was reasonably skeptical and asked me a lot of questions about, well, I mean, what is the right technology if it's not going to be a gasoline-powered car? Well, so I wound up doing the math. I wound up calculating the well-to-wheel energy efficiency of every kind of transportation I could think of. Of course, fuel cells, gasoline, diesel, biofuels, electric cars. Electric cars where the electricity is made from coal, where it's made from natural gas, where it's made from oil. And it was a surprise to both of us that every which way I did the numbers, the electric cars were a lot better than everything else.
Though Eberhard and Tarpening had worked together in hardware and consumer electronics, neither of them had any automotive experience.
Before I had thought about starting a car company, before I proposed that, I had searched the internet for who might make a car still. Not all the big guys were out. And there was a small company in Southern California called AC Propulsion that had made exactly 3 of a little kind of a handmade, kind of a sports car-y thing. It was very homemade.
Go-kartish.
Right. And so I contacted this company and spoke to them, and they were actually busy going out of business because the majority of their income had come from doing small projects for the car companies as they were trying to make electric car demonstrations. But now that the electric car, the zero emissions vehicle mandate had been gutted, all that business went away. So they were going out of business. So I reached out and actually rescued them. I invested some of my own money into the company and tried to get them to build me personally a car. That car was a lead acid powered car and was therefore very short range, and the batteries were persnickety and dangerous. And so in my conversations with them, I said, well, why don't we consider lithium-ion batteries? We had learned a lot about lithium-ion batteries from our work on the electronic books. Our first generation of that product used nickel metal hydride batteries, and then we learned and switched over to lithium-ion batteries for the second generation. So I had proposed was this possible, and it turns out that some of the folks there had been thinking about that too. So I basically financed them to convert their car to a kind of a crude lithium-ion battery pack for that thing. So that's where it began. And that was a proof of concept that actually would work despite the limitations of that car.
Yeah. One of the things in terms of how we found investors and how we kind of figured out how to make the car at the beginning was an electric car is a bunch of computers, it's batteries, it's motors, and then there's the sort of car around it. And the problem is that Silicon Valley does those first things really, really well. So I was pretty convinced, working with Martin, and we were looking through the numbers, and that it was going to be possible to make the thing that made the car go. But I was very concerned we weren't going to be able to make the car to go around it.
After Eberhard and Tarpening came up with the idea for the battery, the next hurdle was to build the car around it. They discovered it was fairly common for automotive companies to outsource certain aspects of manufacturing. So they started looking for a partner and reached out to an English company called Lotus.
We flew down to Los Angeles for the 2002, I guess, auto show,
yeah.
the LA Auto Show. And hunted around and found the Lotus booth and basically forced ourselves upon the Lotus people. We forced him to sit and listen to our presentation, which he did.
Yeah.
And was intrigued.
Yeah, was intrigued enough that he said, well, come to Hethel, which is in England, and we can talk more about this, basically. And I think that was a great gatekeeper because anyone who wasn't serious wasn't going to fly to England, and go do that. But of course we did. Lotus was able to write a letter for us that said, if this company can do what it says and gets funded and everything else,
we'll be their partner.
We might be their partner.
Yeah.
Might. I mean,
it wasn't legally binding,
no,
but yes.
But it was what we needed, though, to show investors that we had a plan. We had at least a plan, and we had a couple of backups as well in how to make the car.
And we had shown through my investment in AC Propulsion that one could build a battery pack that way.
On July 1st, 2003, Tesla Motors was incorporated.
We self-funded it first. Some of my money, some of my brothers and friends and stuff like that, little bits of money here and there. And we were also touching the VC community, particularly ones that had made money on our previous investments.
But it was pretty clear early on. A lot of the VCs, you have to get sort of, if not consensus among the partners, like if you have a big fund and you have 5 partners, they all kind of have to say yes. Or at least you can't have one veto it. So it depends on the structure of the firm. But our reality distortion field wasn't good enough to get like all 5 partners to believe all at once.
The crazy thing is we come into these firms and we convince the tech guy who's in our space, perfectly totally understand it, and we convince a bunch of others, and we get actually vetoed by their biotech guy,
Right.
That's what happened.
I don't like sports cars.
Yeah, or more than that, I'm an expert in sports cars and you don't know anything.
Right.
That was more, because almost every VC is actually an expert on cars.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're actually, and above average drivers, all of them.
I'm sure,
Yeah.
And then we encountered Elon, and you can talk about...
Well, so we had met Elon before in a different way, that we're both space enthusiasts or whatever, and we were we were founding members of the Mars Society, numbers 14 and 15, I believe.
I think, yeah, we have our lifetime memberships.
Yeah, and we went to a talk that the Mars Society put on.
It was their conference.
Yes,
it was their annual conference.
Yeah.
Happened to be at
and
Stanford.
one of the speakers was Musk, and he was intriguing. So we cornered him afterwards and talked to him for a while, and that was nice. That was sort of it. And then later on, I had a gentleman's agreement with the management at AC Propulsion, who was also out trying to get money. And they had chased down Elon Musk and had tried to persuade him to invest in AC Propulsion. And the chemistry between the AC Propulsion team and Musk was not going to work. And they tried for a while. And after a while, they realized they're just not going to get the deal. And the president of AC Propulsion called me up at that point and says, "Okay, I'm giving up on those guys. You can go ahead and talk to Musk now." Yep. So I sent an email off to Elon saying, basically saying, we met at the Mars Society. I don't know if you remember that, but we have this idea, and I'd like to come and talk to you.
That was interesting because so when we met him at the Mars Society, he hadn't started SpaceX yet. That was not in his vision yet. He was trying to launch some experiment with missiles from Russia or something. I'm not exactly sure what it was, but he gave up on that and decided to do SpaceX. So when we went down, it was at SpaceX's original headquarters, I think their first headquarters down there in Hawthorne or wherever it is. And one of the great things about pitching to Elon in this context is that a lot of times we would pitch to the VCs and to other angels, and they would say, "What you're trying to do is so crazy. You're trying to make an electric sports car. That's insane." And we are pitching to somebody who is actually trying to make rocket ships. And so in
you
context,
couldn't really say that.
Right, in context, he was like, "Oh yeah, I got that. This seems, this is a no-brainer."
And he got our idea, our vision right away. I mean, in our original presentation, we said, look, we need to change the way the world thinks about electric cars, okay? Today, people think about electric cars as little ugly things that nobody wants to drive. And we know we can make an electric car that's very different. So to change the way people think about that, we need to make something that's radically different than what people expect. And so we'd like to make something as a high-performance sports car to destroy that old image of what electric cars were. And then follow that up with more mainstream cars moving down market as it becomes more possible. And he got that.
He totally got it. Yeah.
In April of 2004, Musk invested $6.35 million of his own money in the Series A round to help get Tesla Motors off the ground and became chairman of the board.
We sat down at one of our local coffee shops, and I proposed to you, could we architect a battery system using the battery management knowledge that we had from the Rocket book and scale that up to the size of a car battery? And we penciled that out, maybe even on napkins or something in the coffee shop. And
no, engineering pads. We didn't.
That's true.
We always had our engineering pads with us.
But we persuaded ourselves that it was actually feasible.
What was challenging? What was it like? Just what did it
Everything was challenging.
Everything's hard. Everything.
We were inventing from scratch. This was something that had never been done before.
Right. Yeah, and just handling that many cells was a problem mechanically, and sort of making sure that they're safe, and you're dealing with all.
So do you remember when we came back from that conference where they had done somebody was talking about the danger of these lithium-ion batteries? It was just at the time when in the news were suddenly a bunch of laptop fires. There weren't very many of them, but they were quite dramatic, and the videos went viral on the internet. And so our team took some of the cells outside, charged them up, and forced them into thermal runaway, and they were very exciting. Mm-hmm. So then we made a small representation of what we thought our large battery pack was going to be like. We went up to my house up here in the hills, dug a big hole in the ground, put that down in the ground, put a camera down in there, put a big piece of plywood on top of it and a lot of weight, and then forced that group of cells into thermal runaway to see what happened. And it was very exciting. And the result of that was our first really big schedule slip. That was when we said that until we get a handle on this lithium-ion safety issue, it's a day-for-day schedule slip until we figure it out.
Yeah, and I want to say we never did that again. After that
one
really
thing.
Fun. No, at your house. I mean, we then rented a fire pad. A fire pad on the bay, controlled by the fire marshal from that point on. Yep. Well, that was partially we then learned. It's like, we really need to take this in a way that we hadn't really
and that was the right thing to do. I mean, and this was, it was one of these things where we saw there was a potential problem, and we went and learned that lesson pretty quickly. And this is where, basically I set as the company's gold standard that you have to prove on the battery design that you should be able to assume that any of your cells in your battery system will, for reasons you don't understand, go into thermal runaway, and you have to prove that when it does not propagate to adjacent cells. That was the rule we set, and it took a while before we could do that.
Right.
How would you describe the greatest innovations around that battery pack and safety?
We had a crew of people working out how to do this battery system. I mean, how to mount the cells, how to cool them. We invented this cooling tube that went through them, how to make the electrical connection. We originally tried to use resistance welding, which was the normal way of doing electrical connection to cells, to lithium-ion cells, until we came along. We discovered that was unreliable, and worse than that, you couldn't tell if you made a good weld or not at the time of assembly. And we experimented with a lot of different ways to do that, and finally settled on wire bonding, which has then become the what everybody copies now when you're making a cylindrical cell battery pack. Yeah. So we had to invent a lot of stuff, and there was a lot of trial and error, trying different kinds of glues to make the cooling system work, inventing different kinds of cooling tubes, different kinds of insulation. Everything had to be invented from scratch. There was no state of the art. Nobody had ever considered taking nearly 7,000 cells and putting them all together into a battery pack. Nobody had ever done that at all. It was insane when we described it to people. Right. So today, all of the battery management systems in every electric car today is based on that work, all of them.
In 2006, Tesla unveiled the prototype of its first car, the Roadster. The all-electric sports car sparked a lot of interest before it was even for sale.
The launch event, I don't know, it's a ton of people inside of a big tent. It was really, really loud. I had my kids there. They were little at that point. My daughter was dressed up in a beautiful little white dress, and my son was in a tuxedo. He was very proud of himself. He was, 4 or something. Yeah. And we had these cars going around, and I stood up and gave a talk about what the car was doing and welcoming people and so on, and inviting everybody to get in the car and drive. And I don't know, it went on until we were all exhausted.
Yeah. Oh no, I have a very distinct memory. Is that before the event starts? So we're still setting up. We still, no visitors are coming in for another, 2 hours. I mean, it's really early, and there had been a rumor that Governor Schwarzenegger, who's governor at the time, might show up, but who knows, right? So we're there, and I'm with one of the other engineers, and we're, literally moving chairs around and getting stuff. And in walks Schwarzenegger and his sort of entourage. Goes, "Where are the cars?" And he comes, and that neither of us, it was such a surprise, and it was hours before we were ready, and we just kind of pointed. We didn't say anything. And he walks over, and gets in one. It was great.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you innovated in terms of the sales and why you did that?
In terms of taking pre-orders, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that was really not in our original plan. We would do show and tells, of various prototypes, and we had receptions at the R&D center, our offices in San Carlos, and and it was all about keeping our customers engaged and letting them come along on the journey, because it really was a journey, and we didn't really know exactly the timing. And we were quite open about, we had a setback here, or or this went really well, and that
we put pictures up of internals of the things. And
we had customers literally say, like, this is the most exciting thing I've been involved in, even though in some level they just wrote a check, but they believed in the vision enough to write that check, and now they're participating in this process that we were going through. What ended up happening is as we were coming out of stealth mode, and we were still in stealth mode, but as more people found out about us, they would come and say, "I want to be on the list."
Even before that, a bunch of our smaller investors or individuals would say, "Well, I want to buy a car, and I'll pay for it now." Yeah. The whole thing. I'll put $100,000 down now, and I want to be on the list, and I want to know what place I am on the list.
Right. And we didn't have a list, and it was not part of.
We did. I made one.
Well, no, I know.
It was a spreadsheet on my computer.
Right, but we made it in response to incoming demand, which was, it wasn't like we had this clever marketing thing we were going to do. I mean, people kept asking. So then we said, well, actually, there's clear interest in this. What can we do from a business perspective to make this work, and a way of supporting the customers as they make these commitments to us? And that's how we came up with the whole program. There were many technical setbacks, and that just happens in a startup.
For us, I would say the thing that turned out to be the hardest, that we didn't know at all, that totally caught us by surprise, was the difficulty of getting suppliers to supply
Yes,
stuff for us, right?
totally.
We originally planned to use a lot more standard technologies, for example, ordinary door handles rather than electric door handles, and as we changed to more and more exotic ideas along the way, we took on more and more risk of that. But nonetheless, I mean, just getting a supplier to supply us with airbags. I mean, the airbag supplier would look at us and say, first of all, the amount of airbags you're going to buy is what a normal car company would buy for a prototype run for their cars that never get sold, and that's it. And on the other hand, you don't have deep pockets, so all we see is risk. So to persuade them to actually be willing to sell us airbags, seat belts, door latches, any kind of safety component, everyone was a struggle.
Yeah, that was something we just didn't anticipate.
And we knew it'd be hard, but we didn't know how hard.
Yeah. I mean, we just assumed that the suppliers, would be willing to work with us in a way that they weren't, and that was something that Lotus really helped us with because they had those existing supplier relationships.
Do you want to say anything about key players who were there in the early days with you?
I kind of think the whole gang of them were pretty good. I don't know. I mean, what that early crew put up with in the early days. When JB likes to call himself a founder, it's funny because Tristan started the same day.
That's right.
So if he's a founder, so's she.
Yeah.
Right? So she was one of our software engineers, really first rate.
Yeah.
And now she's just quietly going on with her life, and she was as much a founder as JB was.
In the summer of 2007, Eberhard was replaced as CEO and left the company a few months later. Musk eventually became the fourth CEO of the company and has held that role since October of 2008.
Can you describe the moment that you realized you could no longer be part of Tesla?
No.
Is there anything you can say about why you left?
No. Well, I was voted off the island, and in a rather rude way. It wound up with some lawsuits and some settlements, and it's history now. Yeah, so I can't say a lot about it.
Yeah. So
he got to wear the white hat.
I know.
Right
I did not do that. When I left Tesla, we had the Roadster was essentially finished, and we were waiting on one particular super annoying thing, dealing with the transmission and changing some power electronics, which nearly tanked the company. That's one of those near-death experiences of the company. And we were reassigning all of the engineers to the new sedan project, which we'd been working on in a small level for the previous year or so. And as the engineers would come off the design team for the Roadster, we were shifting over to the Model S. And I looked at that, and I had 3 little kids at home, and I'd been doing nothing but Tesla for 5 years, and I thought it's going to be another 5 years. And Martin wasn't there anymore; it wasn't as much fun, and I thought, yeah, it's time to leave. And I don't have any regrets. It was an awesome time. Yeah. The whole thing was wonderful from the beginning to the end. It was, the worst and the best, and it's worked out great.
Tesla restarted the electric vehicle revolution. Without Tesla, there would not be electric cars today. And electric cars are the most important change in the automotive industry. It's transforming the entire auto industry, and it all comes from what we did at Tesla. If you look at the original business plan we wrote for Tesla, we described in great detail the Tesla Roadster, and we said, once this car is successful, the next car we should make is either a large SUV, an expensive SUV, or a large sedan. And once that's successful, the next car would be down market, a sedan for a smaller size market. So it is more or less following what we predicted. I mean, not in the details, but in the big picture, it's exactly what we thought should be done.
The sedan market is enormously large. It's much, much bigger than the sports car market, the Roadster market. And then below that is the sort of Model 3 segment of that market. And if you're going to have a big impact, you have to play there. But you can't start there because the capital requirements are just too vast, and you don't know what you're doing yet. You have to learn and develop the technology along the way.
No, starting with the sports car was actually really smart, not just because it changed the image of the electric car, but it was a small market, and the typical sports car buyer is fairly forgiving of, for example, very crude interiors of the car. We had a very, very simple entertainment system. The seats were, not electric. Everything was fairly simple on it. And the kinds of customers of sports cars actually like that kind of stuff. They like the quirkiness of it, and they'll tolerate even mistakes in the car that require recall the car, so long as you treat the customer well.
Does the Elon today, does that look like the Elon you knew in 2003?
I think Elonness has increased over the years.
No.
If you had to describe him in a nutshell.
No. I mean, if you wanted to describe Elon Musk in a nutshell, I don't think he would fit in a nutshell.
Yeah, Elon is complicated. He's real smart and delves into everything, which can be both a positive and a negative. He pushes on certain things in development that you kind of wonder why, and sometimes it makes sense and sometimes it doesn't. And he's very much into risk. He's willing to take on risks, financial risks, for himself personally, and technology risks when he's working on something new that are a little out there. But when it works, it's really amazing. But of course, there's lots of sort of collateral damage along the way. But it's a way. It's a way to make things work.
Tesla has done a great job of building a loyal fan base. They still have. Their followers will accept anything from them.
People want to, they want to do something that makes a difference, and
yes.
I think it's still, it still has that excitement. At least I hope it does.
I mean, it's reached across from the early adopters into a more mainstream audience, and that's that's critical. And of course, a lot of people now who are buying the cars are just buying a car in some sense, which is in a way better, right?
We did it. We got across that chasm. Although even then, I will hear people that have no idea that I'm associated with Tesla anyway. They'll say, "Oh, we just got our Model 3 or whatever," and it's so great, and I just love. I mean, they're into it in a way that they're not in a.
The main thing is that they just drive differently.
Yeah, they're
you
way
go for
more
a drive
fun to
in
drive.
a Tesla, and it does not drive like your previous gasoline car. It's more fun.
Would you say you're still rooting for Tesla today?
I'm of course rooting for Tesla. I'm still a shareholder, and I'm still very interested to see that the mission that we pushed Tesla on in the beginning succeeds, for sure.
Yeah, the mission is so important, and as a shareholder, I want it to be successful. So yes, we want Tesla.
I mean, one of those kind of aha moments early on in the days of Tesla, before Al Gore came out with his movie, he was lecturing at various places around the country, and we and a couple of our staff went to go hear him speak at Stanford. As we walked out, one of our colleagues, Ron, said, because he was shaken by the talk also, and he said, "We've got to do something about this. We have to do something." And I said, "Ron, what do you think we're doing? That's the whole point of the company."